Well, hello and welcome. Today we're looking at a Commodore 128 that I got, and we will need to do some keyboard repair and keyboard Retrobright. Otherwise, I've seen this in action and it should be working fine. So let's get on with it.
So I'm in Sweden, but the box here is in German. See the Commodore 128 and the RAM there in German. And flipping it over, there's a lot more text, and we see a nice setup there with a tank mouse and the 1570 disk drive that really uses the potential of the 128. And yeah, you don't see a tank mouse with the Commodore 64 very often. Opening it, we see some manuals. Nice. It's a Swedish manual to the 128. And yeah, nice thick book. Nice table of contents.
And here's a little pamphlet with some really nice sort of setup pictures in colour, no less. See, there's a British plug there in the wall, but this is also, this is in English actually. So I guess it's a UK version of it. And here's a third little introductory guide. Just yeah, I guess this is the Swedish version of the same pamphlet, really, with the setup pictures. And yeah, wow, that looks white. Well, to the right looks rather white. That's why it looks kind of yellow, isn't it? Oh. Yeah, this is useful. Imagine poring over these. You've got a new Commodore 128 in the 80s, must have been exciting. Got an antenna cable, yeah, feels good. Alright, let's have a look at the power supply. Now this power supply looks just like the Amiga 500 power supply, but of course it's not. The connector is, so here's the Amiga 500 power supply, an old one that I've been sort of trying to fix, but you see the Amiga one has that opening for the power switch there on the side. That's the only sort of difference really on the outside. Of course the specifications are different, and so you can't use these interchangeably between the Amiga 500 and the Commodore 128. Yeah. So I had to remove those sort of cover holes in order to unscrew to screw apart the Amiga 500 power supply, and yeah, I don't want to do that again. That was rather hard. Alright, let's actually get the actual computer out of the box. I love it when the original box has the packing material as well. Alright, here is the computer. As you can see, there are actually 3 keys, as we'll come back to, that are original color, one would presume, and the others are very, very yellowed. So here we are, and yeah, there is sort of one key that is stuck, and this is the only issue with this computer actually, that the seller mentioned that needs to be fixed. Of course, I would like to fix the yellowing of the keys as well. There are also some little stickers there on the side. Yeah, nice profile. Look at that. And yeah, the ports, of course, the power on the side, just as the Commodore 64 has, whereas the Amiga 500, of course, has the power outlet on the back. And yeah, RGB output there, and RF modulator built in. Of course, the Amiga 500 doesn't. And then we have video and serial cassette port, and the big expansion port there on the back. Yeah, look at that. It comes down really thin, really thin. It'd be cool to make a comparison actually with the Amiga 500, which I have lying around. Let's just take that one up on the bench as well and compare them. So this is my Amiga 500. Putting them on top of each other, we see that they're actually the same sort of depth, but because the Amiga is wider and a bit thicker in the front. And the Amiga 500 is obviously famous for its wedge shape, but the Commodore 128 is even sharper in its wedge form. But I mean, it's clear to see how related these are and how they look. I mean, they came in 1985 and 1987 respectively. So look at these three keys. So the 0 there is really white. I mean, look at that, and the plus sign and the pound sign. And that is, I mean, that must be the original color, because it does match the rest of the case that actually hasn't yellowed much, but the other keys are terrible. I mean, wow, I haven't seen such yellowed keys. You can see my Apple keyboard there on the desk, and sometimes sort of the space key has another material, ABS plastic I think, and it does yellow quicker, but because there's no difference in plastic among the keys that were yellowed and not yellowed on the C128, so that's weird. So the seal here hasn't actually been broken, and I was thinking if we can try to take this off carefully and sort of put it back again, but of course the whole point of having these seals is that it should be sort of obvious when you've opened it, and so the actual less destructive, the least destructive way to get into this is really just to punch through it and unscrew the screw. I'm pretty sure. So I've got the other screws removed, I think, and now that one is gone as well. I can pop this open. I've always liked to wanted to have a look inside, but opening this proved extremely difficult. I mean, there are these sort of plastic tabs inside, and they were terrible trying to figure out where they were. I kind of gave up for a little while. I had to look online, I think, to see where the tabs were, but yeah, so one of the plungers is actually stuck under this key, and this was sort of the main issue that I need to do something about. And of course each keycap has this little metal spring underneath it, and yeah, they're annoying. I have to get sort of some containers out there to put them in when I take them off, because they do have a tendency to jump off and get very lost. My room is very small, but things manage to get lost, and in there anyway. Yeah, I really love this keycap remover. Of course, I've used that a lot for taking apart keycaps and cleaning computers. I used some copper wire actually that I sort of strung together into keycap remover, but I ended up having to use sort of 2 fingers at a time, both hands, putting the keycaps up, and I think it risked making a mark a little bit. So I mean, if you're like, even if you're just planning to open one keyboard or removing the keycaps on one single keyboard, it's so worth ordering one of these little keycaps. Now, it's actually on the side, just sort of above the keyboard on the side, where there are plastic tabs that hold on tight, and of course you don't want to be bending it hard and breaking anything, but they do sort of require some force, although it's good to be sort of pushing on the right side. Like if the tab is on the top, you obviously need to push the top, and if the tab is on the bottom, you need to push the bottom for the plastic to bend in and to open. Yeah, but the tab was really hard getting open. This is so annoying. Like, you know, you've taken out all the screws and then just nothing, you know. But yeah, in the end I managed. And of course you have to disconnect the keyboard from the computer, but there's also a ground wire that actually has to be unscrewed, and this is not the case on the Commodore 64, for example, but this is the case with this case. So yeah, I had to unscrew that, and then there's the little LED lamp there that has to be disconnected, and so those three things out of the way, and here is the substantial metal RF shield then underneath, and yeah, that is in good shape. I mean, the seal was locked, no one has been into this. There is some slight signs of corrosion on the shield at the top, maybe some moist getting through the vents. So here is the tab. So the tab is actually on the keyboard part then. So this is the part you need to push in to get it off. But yeah, really stuck, that one. So in order to sort of open the shield, you need to unscrew the screws, and of course the shield, the RF shield, also serves as heat sinks. You can see the sort of the metal part going down, touching the different chips to distribute the heat, and this is was a good reason to actually keep this heat shield, even if it for RF purposes isn't really necessary, I guess. So there's a bunch of these screws holding the shield in. I didn't quite expect there to be so many, but yeah, I guess why not? It's also holding the the motherboard in place, actually. So yeah, serving multiple functions there. It's great that there's still in the C28 here an RF module. I find it hard working with the Amigas without the RF module sometimes, if I don't have the appropriate cables and monitors to make them work. So here it is. You see some corrosion up there then. I have to sandpaper that down, but yeah, otherwise looking pretty good. And here is the exposed motherboard. That looks great. Still has some heatsink compound on some of the chips, and what looks like bodges, but these apparently are actually bodges from the factory, and I had to look at that on the internet, because this is pretty stuck, so I'm not opening that. But yeah, this seems to be the Swedish language module that looks like it's been done by someone after the factory, but that is just language customization there. And yeah, no dust really, feels pretty clean. Nice. And here you can see sort of the underside of this with the compound heatsink compound stuck to the RF shield. I guess one could put some new compound, that would help. There aren't too many capacitors and needing changing, and they seem to be in a good state. I haven't really heard of these going bad. I mean, I work a lot with Macintosh computers, and one really has to change the capacitors in Macintosh computers, but in these, not so much. Getting this out is a bit finicky. As you can see, one has to sort of tilt it at an angle. It doesn't have these, it doesn't screw in the back case like the Amiga 500 with the little connector screws, but it does have a heatsink, sorry, a shield on the back as well, which is actually sort of yeah, put in place. I think it's welded as well, actually, as well as sort of with this metal twisted. So I will definitely clean this out a bit. Some dust coming in through the vents, of course, and yeah, you see my lovely 70s cushion there that I used to sit on my hard wooden chair, but it serves very well for electronics as well, to put things on soft. Right, I do have a dedicated towel though. Yeah, should be using that. It's white, that's distracting. Right, and now let's have a look at the actual keyboard, which has the broken stem. Of course, this will require some work. Let's get this open. Right, that's out. To start disassemble, and let's have a look at the top part of the case. And yeah, it's not very yellowed. It's a bit yellowed as compared to the inside, and you can see there's been a little sticker there, and there's some stickers here on the side, but yeah, overall I would say that's in pretty good state. And of course, now in order to take this apart, there are about 100 million little screws. And there's little plastic things that hold the keyboard in place. Right, and yeah, these little plastic pieces, they're actually to be on the back of the LED fitting that holds the LED light up against the front of the front case, and yeah, it does take some time to figure out how that is to go back in, but there we go. And yeah, I have one of the keys out, and this is the plunger that sort of sticks it inside. So even with the spring on it, it doesn't actually pop out again like it's supposed to. So we got to have a closer look at that. But yeah, and in order to get the plunger out, of course, we need to take the back off. But we can also sort of compare the two. One plunger that is broken, and one that does come out a bit. I took a good keycap, I mean a good plunger off to just compare, but see how without the spring it actually stays down even a good plunger. But there's some issue with the friction. There's too much friction between the plunger and the hole that it's supposed to go through, and I think the plunger is probably broken, a bit cracked, and so it expands in the hole. Right, so let's try to get the good one back on, and yeah, disassemble everything in the back. Get the back plate off so we can actually access the plungers, and take out my little magnet to put all the screws on. I won't lose them. But in order to actually get the back plate off, we have to desolder some 3, I think, yeah, 3 sort of toggle switches, like caps lock, the caps lock key, and 2 other keys that are actually soldered to the backboard. Right, and the back plate is off, and here we are. It is actually the hard membrane itself that is attached to the backboard. It is not just sort of the plastic flimsy membrane that you find in the Amiga 500 keyboards, but rather more substantial, harder to replace as well, but this one actually looks in quite a good shape. So here we are. Here is the stem. The stem with the issue. So I've taken this out. I have to be careful not to sort of turn the flip the keyboard, because all the stems are obviously just hanging in there by being turned this way. Trying to get the stem stuck on the cap. That actually works. It does stick on the cap, but I'm gonna have to take a closer look at one that does work to compare them. What's the issue with the first one that I took out? It's always great when something is faulty to have something not faulty to compare it to. It goes for disk drives or anything really. Having 2 of everything is just great if you have the space. Yeah, so I'm fumbling around with this somehow, but taking a closer look at it, you can get it in focus. You see that there is actually a crack along the side of the stem. Do you see it there? You see the shadow of the crack alongside, and of course this makes it, when you sort of push the keycap into it, it cracks open more, and then it becomes too wide for the hole in which it goes, and so it doesn't slide up and down when you press the keycap like you should. So we have to find a solution to this. And I was kind of toying with the idea of trying to glue it together, but it's really hard to get glue sort of into that crack, and the force of sort of pressing the keycap into it will make it inevitably sort of to break again, and I can't put anything around it because then it becomes too thick for the actual hole. So the only alternative really is to replace the stem to get another stem, and I don't actually have these exact stems. I was thinking of maybe using another key from the same keyboard and sort of sacrificing a key that isn't used as much, because this wouldn't be quite the restoration in that case. And so what I probably will do is I will use a stem from another keyboard, and I will put that one on the top row where sort of the number keys and the symbol keys go, in case it doesn't quite work the same way. Of course, I will be doing testing to make sure it does, but I'll put it in the top row anyway. So yeah, let's see how that works out. And the keyboard that I will use is a keyboard that I have been sacrificing other parts from. You see the ADB connectors are missing from this Apple keyboard, and I will be using the Plunger in this keyboard. It's not exactly the same, but hopefully it will work. It's actually white to start with. The others in this keyboard are black, but yeah, I think it will work. Right, so now to this rather satisfying part of taking out all the keycaps and putting them in this tub, preparing them for some soapy water, and of course the metal springs have to go in a separate container. We don't want to get them wet. Interestingly, the plungers on the top row are actually different in color, at least. They're actually blue, while the others are black. I said the spare one from the other keyboard that I'll be putting in is white, but these actually do look identical, with the color as the only difference. Wonder why. Ew, this is rather yucky. Look at that. This is one dirty keycap. Well, at least it will be worth my while cleaning it. It's very satisfying cleaning caps that are actually dirty. Like, these are actually different types of springs. I think the biggest spring was on the space bar, and the smallest springs on the normal caps. I didn't quite get a decent before picture before I retrobrighted, but this one will do. You see the yellowing, and after the retrobrighting, here we are. All the keys look the same, and yeah, I'm really pleased with this actually. Here's also a picture of the C28 mode working well, and the keys working there, and the Commodore 64 mode also working. And if you do like seeing old computers brought back to life and to their former glory, then please do consider subscribing and hitting that like button for more retro computing stuff coming your way in the future. Thank you for watching. Bye.